All right, so stickers for chapter 13 test. Hey, people, you have to do test corrections today, so make sure you guys get in here today and do test corrections. Alex, today, test corrections. You have missed the last two. That is detriment to your grade. So, stickers, Chloe. Scott, you're in high grade. Again, this is 2 times running for you, Scott. Don't know what's going on. Awesome. Good deal. That's out of everyone's do stuff when you say things like that. Scott, that's not at speed. Stop it. Stop it. This is being recorded. Oh, Gavin, sticker. Good deal. Sorry. This test doesn't usually have a lot of stickers because it's about one thing. So you had 54, well, not really. There's probably about 45 questions about Jackson, which is hard. On a regular AP test in the when we took it in May, you might have one question on Jackson. So when we do these tests that are about one topic, traditionally they don't do well. What is really nice is you guys got all, I think that's it right here. Gavin, Chloe, Scott. What
was the cutoff for the test?
180. A lot of 160s, a lot. But this one's always hard. My positive part is that those repetitive questions, hopefully that you notice, like about the Navigation Acts again, those you guys did really well on. I guess that should be note to self. If I ask enough questions about the Navigation Act, eventually you're going to get them. The question that was missed the most, and that some of you got every single question wrong about it, will be what we're having our SAQ on Monday. It was the question of King Andrew. It was a political cartoon, King Andrew. Some of you missed all 5 of those. Political cartoons are hard because, again, yes, sir? What?
Because I remember it was like kind of pulled down, like being either by the National Bank or
No, that's the Hydra. There was 2 political cartoons. The Hydra was killing the bank. You guys did really good on that one. It's the one where he was dressed in the robes, standing, and it had all the words around it. That's the one that most, because it is not a positive image of Andrew Jackson. Most of you missed them because you thought that was a positive image of Andrew Jackson. It's a negative image. It's the people that hate Andrew Jackson as King Andrew.
Were those the political cartoons on the thing, the big thing?
Oh, yeah. Lots. Probably, out of the 54 questions, there will probably be 3 political cartoons. Some of them, and these ones are fairly easy as we move into, and the political cartoons that show up most are from the 60s and 70s, because then we have a lot of stuff going on. Protests of Vietnam, student protest, African-American civil rights movement, Indian movements, LGBT movement. We got tons of stuff happening in the 70s. So your SAQ that you guys will do on Monday in Canvas online will be that cartoon. So, yes, sir.
we're online about that next week.
Yes, and I was going to make sure that you understood. This is the last time that you guys will see me until November 30th. And let's cross our fingers that we see each other November 30th. Your SAQ that's on Canvas on Monday, has anybody, my people that have been quarantined, have any of you taken one yet, SAQ on Canvas? It's not that hard, is it? It's not that hard. You still get the 10 minutes. You get the questions. This one will be easy because there's not much to read, which will make that easier. You're just looking at that political cartoon, and then it does time you out in 10 minutes. So that will be on Monday. Tuesday will be a quiz, a regular reading quiz, and a lecture, I think. But make sure you check, okay, Canvas. I don't make any of those things, especially since I already told you what the topic is for the SAQ. I'm not going to make that due at any time. I gave you guys my speech about why I don't do Zooms and 3 o'clocks and all that stuff. So I think the only thing that I would change about that is if we went all virtual and I had everybody taking tests at the same time. That might change, but we'll not cross that bridge yet. We'll stay on the good side of the road and not talk about that yet. All right, so we're on page 6 of our notes, and we're getting ready to talk about workers. And we're getting ready to move into this, again, we're talking about this thing called the market economy. And again, when we talk about a market economy, because that's what that term will be used, think about that word as markets. Like what part of the country had what markets, right? So the North or the East, their market was industry. The South, their market was cash crops. The West, their market was, I don't know what you call food crops, but food crops that you could eat. And that becomes this triangle that we're creating, these sectors. It's never really good when you only have one sector, especially in agriculture, especially if it's cash crops, because if your cash crop goes bad that one time, you're in deep trouble. But all of these sectors are based on a couple of things that also are critical, and one is workers. So we're going to look up at the North and look at that industrial revolution with workers. So on the top of page 6, we're looking at why the North was able to have an industrial revolution, and the reason being was all those immigrants that are coming to places like New York and Boston, and they can't move, right? Those are the poor workers or the poor immigrants that get there and they can't move. So we now have this flip-flop where our skilled workers and our craftspeople, are people that know how to make things, they now no longer have jobs, right? Because they're displaced. So if we now have a factory that can make guns with interchangeable parts, gunsmiths now no longer have the same types of employment opportunities as they did before. A2, working conditions are horrible, absolutely horrendously horrible. There are no safety organizations that keep you from using pizza cutters. There's no workman's comp. There is nothing that protects you. The hours are long. Your hours are as long as it's daylight inside of the factory. So there's not typical like work hours. Very, very low wages, very few breaks, very poor ventilation, no lighting, bad heating. And then I always like to add the threat of capital punishment. They can hit you. They got sticks, can hit you, make you work harder, especially if you're a female and especially if you're a child. And that is the idea. You can be released from your job at any time for any reason without any type of unemployment insurance. And this is, again, why eventually, when we get to the turn of the century, unions will be important. Because if you look at A3, workers are forbidden by law to form unions. You cannot form a union. And before 1835, we've only got 24 strikes, as opposed to when we get to the Gilded Age and the turn of the century, we're going to probably have 24 strikes in a week. So the upper hand in this manufacturing system is held by the factory owners. There are zero rights for workers, and the reason factory owners can get away with it is there's so many workers. There's so many workers. I've got to hire one person for something. There'll be 50 people that want that job. And when you as a manufacturer and an owner have that opportunity, that there's 50 people for a job, then you can get labor, bless you, for lower prices. Don't have to do improve worker conditions. We're in the flip-flop of that now. The flip-flop is can't find people. My husband manages about 10 power plants. He cannot find an environmental engineer. Cannot find one. He has been looking for one for almost a year and a half, can't find one. Although the ones that he does find can't pass a drug test. He even says, okay, I'm going to give you a drug test in 2 weeks. 2 weeks, this day. He even says, I'm recording this, but nobody's going to listen. I don't even care if you pop for weed. I don't even care if you pop for weed. I don't care about that one. And these are people from Rose-Hulman and MIT. Cannot find one. What?
That's how they deal with stress.
Yeah. But you just failed a drug test on a job that's going to start you out at about $95,000 a year. Yeah. That's starting pay for an environmental engineer. Can't find a safety engineer, same. So you guys will be entering the job market for most professions, if that's the route you choose, at the flip-flop. There are not enough of you to go around. We're at the reverse with these northern workers. There are way too many. And there are those people that are in vulnerable situations, such as females and women, children that are the most vulnerable, that are the most desirable to hire. I can shortchange you on your wages. I can physically accost and abuse you. And again, if you look at B, women and children typically worked 6 days a week for extremely low wages. Half of the nations, please look at B2. In 1820, half of the workers were under the age of 10. Half, under the age of 10. That is deplorable. Suffered devastating effects from abuse, and that's all kinds of abuse, physical abuse, sexual abuse, mental abuse. And it is why, of all the stuff that comes from our Gilded Age as we move forward, the one that makes the most heartfelt sense to me is child labor laws, which is why they still bother me. Gains for workers are small. One of the things that will happen to working class men is the ability to vote. And so they can make their political statements in the voting booth. Working man's parties, laborers are trying to go for a 10-hour workday, a higher wage, tolerable working conditions, public education, and most important, to end imprisonment for debt. Like, you can't keep sending us to prison because we owe money. I'm never going to get out of that. In 1840, President Van Buren is going to establish a 10-hour workday just for federal employees. So let's talk about why that's significant. It doesn't seem like a big deal. The government can't change or can't make at this point. We're on page 6, I'm sorry.
Okay.
I probably said that. I'm sorry. We're on page 6. I just read C2. There we go. Okay.
I was on the other page.
Yeah, I probably said the wrong page. When we start to begin to change things in the working place over time, the only thing that presidents can do to proceed that along is to work with federal employees. So this will be one of the things Van Buren can do with federal employees, and that the hope is that that kind of trickles down to other places. In the 1950s, President Eisenhower and President Truman and President Eisenhower will integrate the United States military. And again, the hope is that that kind of begins this process that moves that along in other places. So federal employees will have a 10-day work week. That's 10 hours a day, 6 days a week. That's a lot of working compared to what we continually see as a regular work day. And again, several states are going to follow suit. We will have an increased number of strikes. They're going to fail. And the Commonwealth versus Hunt, Massachusetts State Supreme Court, labor unions are legal so long as they're not violent or subversive. So that is a really important beginning in our labor union history. And again, that is something that will be, we'll spend a lot of time as we get to the 1880s. So that's our northern workers. In the West, we have farmers. So our Western farmers, the Trans-Allegheny region, Ohio, Indiana, Illinois territory, now becomes the breadbasket of the United States. So remember when we started with our colonies breadbasket was Pennsylvania and New York. We've now moved that into Ohio, Indiana, and Illinois. And most importantly, please make sure you highlight to the world. In about 30 years, this area will be exporting enough food not only to feed ourselves, but to feed the whole world, which is, again, a significant thing. I think it's easy to imagine it in the 21st century with the successes of agriculture and agriculture sciences and technology. But when you think in the 1850s and the 1860s, we were able to do that as well. It's pretty impressive. Most of the produce is sent down the Mississippi River, and again, that's why that Mississippi River was so important. And corn, because that's what we grow. Lots and lots and lots of corn. And we do two things with it. We make liquor, corn liquor, and pig feed. And those are the types of things, again, that make the West distinct and different. In order to do that, we had to have two really important technological advances in the agricultural planting, sowing, reaping, harvesting of these crops. And one of the things is the soil, right? Once you get over on the other side of the mountains, the soil and the density of the soil gets really, and feel free, my people, to correct me on any of my stuff that I'm saying that's incorrect. The plows on the other side don't work as well because we have this dense soil, especially with this dense grass on top of it, especially as we move into Iowa, Kansas, Nebraska. John Deere gives us this really deep steel plow that can break that up. And not only this steel plow that used to be held by hand and walked, now can be attached to animals and teams of animals that will be better at plowing. Mr. McCormick is going to introduce the mechanical mower reaper, can do the work of 5 men. And that technology rapidly transforms what farmers can do as far as being able to sustain a family versus being able to actually make a living and produce enough food to sell for profit. These two things, Deere and McCormick, which I'm hoping all of you guys already knew those names and it's not a giant surprise to you, these names do pop up a lot on the College Board. The reason they pop up a lot on the College Board is that people on those two coasts traditionally don't know these things. John Deere, maybe, yeah, they don't. Have I not ever told you the story when we moved here with my husband and he was so excited we were surrounded by corn? Like we could just go pick ears of corn and eat. I'm like, honey, that's not corn for eating. What do you do with it? I'm like, it's not corn for eating. It's corn. Okay. And then as it proceeded to die, that puzzled him. Like, okay, what kind of crazy farmer just lets his crop die? And because it's feed, or at that time I didn't know, could be made cornmeal. Like, but it's not to eat. No, he doesn't know. He's puzzled by why what he thinks are barns that are falling down. Like, why do they just leave those barns falling down? Like, I think they still use them. It's about to fall down. It's a barn. They use it till it falls down. He grew up in Southern California. He has no perception of agriculture and food and how it goes. You should have seen the first year we were here. So, because we live over at the lake, so those fields, this year they were corn. Last year they were beans, and then 2 or 3 years ago they were nothing. Couldn't get that in his head. What is that? I said, well, it's just probably some kind of ground cover. Why? Because they got to let it relax. Well, that's dumb. Are they going to make any money? I didn't even get into that with him. Like, well, yeah, they do. They get money for not growing, because that would have sent him over the edge. But yeah, he doesn't get it. He doesn't get it at all. At all. So at the top of page 7, what is significant and especially important to our area is farming is going to change to large specialized cash crop agriculture. Now, the bottom flip side, not so great side of that, is for farmers to get these equipment and technology. As many of you know that live in farming families, you go into debt. And you go into big debt, and it's a revolving kind of thing. And as long as you keep producing every year, you're good. But you have one bad year, and it's going to set you back. And that, again, will be part of the issue as we move forward about 60 years. Began producing more than their markets could consume, which is a positive thing. And now farmers need to become businessmen. It's the switch between a farmer being a farmer and a farmer being a businessman. How can I sell this? How do I move this? And in about, what are we at, 1840? In about 20 years, they finally get smart by watching all these other industries form unions, and they're going to start to form things called farmers alliances, which eventually will turn into co-ops. Like, let's all put our stuff together. We'll be in a better situation for that. So that happens, but can't happen without, on page 7, transportation. So it's great if you're a farmer and you can grow stuff and you can grow more than you need, but you got to get it somewhere. So we begin this thing called a transportation revolution. And the prime motive is the desire of the East or the North to tap the resources of the West. We need to get in there. We need to bring our stuff out West for them to buy. Soaps, perfumes, trumpets, sheet music, buttons, all that stuff needs to get out there. And so the significance of this transportation revolution creates a national market economy. And we specialize in these things. West is grain, North is industry, South is cotton. And this will explode our economy. It will explode movement West. And it will begin for the United States to show up on a global market. It is important and significant for you to know that the United States becomes a superpower economically first, way before we're a political superpower, way before we're a military power. The first thing we become is an economic superpower. And that is fairly impressive. In less than about 60 years, the United States is an economic superpower. It says a lot about what the foundation and the principles of the United States are: capitalism, this ability for everybody to be successful, and the conditions that the government sets that allows that to happen. So prior to our transportation revolution, it's poor, right? Our roads are bad. We can't hardly move anything at all. Rivers run north and south. If it's dry, and again, Henry Clay's American system, the part that doesn't pass, the internal improvements, is what has set this thing up. So again, what's going to happen is the American people are going to take it on themselves. They're going to say, the government's not doing this. We need to build the roads ourselves. And so what we start with are these things called turnpikes. So if you travel a lot with your family, especially if you've ever been in Pennsylvania or even West Virginia, you get on these turnpikes and two things happen. One, you can't get off, right? They're just straight roads. And when you get off, you usually have to pay a toll. When you're on these turnpikes, even like gas is on these centrally located things, and you got to buy gas there. And guess how much more it is at those little places than it is any place else. It's the only place you can find food. And I can guarantee you a Big Mac on the Pennsylvania Turnpike is about 50 to 75 cents more than a Big Mac if you could go in the next town, because they've strapped you in. And to get off, you have to pay a toll. It's not the same as tollways in Chicago. Those are different. Tollways in Chicago are about building those tollways. But turnpikes are expressly built to keep you in that one direction. Yes, ma'am?
I thought that was illegal to make things a lot more expensive when it's the only option. Is it not illegal?
Not on turnpikes.
Okay.
You mean like gas gouging and that
Yeah,
stuff? It's
yeah.
not gas gouging because it's the way that it's set up. Yeah, that's not gas gouging.
Okay.
Yes.
We were in New York City. We got on like one of those things.
Ooh, you
It
can't
was
get off.
terrible.
You can't get off.
We were driving around those things.
Mm-hmm.
We went through the same one like 3 times.
Yep.
They kept making us pay.
Yep, and you have to pay, even though you're like, I've been through here. Yep, they still make you pay. Chicago's tollways are fairly simple. They are very much like regular roads, and you can figure it out. New York system is bad. West Virginia, if you go through West Virginia, those tolls are like 10, 12 bucks. They are not cheap. It's not like throwing 75 cents in. They are expensive. And I don't know that you can get through West Virginia without being on those stupid toll roads. But yes.
feel like, is it the same as like whenever you're like going out of Orlando and stuff, like those things where it's like you have to drive?
Yes, but
Why?
those are built differently. These are old. These turnpikes in Virginia, I'm sorry, in West Virginia and Pennsylvania. Why do they do that? Because they take it and pay for the roads. Florida has to do that because Florida does not have a state income tax. You don't pay state income tax in Florida. So everything in Florida is jacked up, crazy prices because nobody pays an income tax. And I don't know how that makes them feel better. Like if you go get a driver's license in Florida, it's about $40.
How much is it here?
10. If you go to register your car in Florida, it's outrageous because they don't have a state income tax. So the flip side is you don't pay a state income tax, but everything else that you do that interacts with the federal government or the state government, it's going to cost you scads and scads and scads of money. So
Sorry, that was my question.
we're on a different, what? Oh, never mind. So turnpikes. So what's a turnpike? In 1790, the first turnpike in Lancaster is built by a private company. This is the beginning. Again, remember my bedrock, my foundation that we're building about the United States and that bedrock of capitalism. People realize you can make money with roads. How do you make money with roads? This is where the word turnpike comes from. In the road that you build, you put these big, giant pikes that no one can get on your road until you pay it. And when they pay it, you turn the pikes. So people realize you build a nice road, even if you have to pay for it. I'm going to borrow Field of Dreams. They will come. If you build it, they will come. And so we start roads the opposite of what Henry Clay wanted to do. Henry Clay said the federal government should provide for this transportation. Capitalist Americans say, I'm going to build a road. I'm going to build a road, and I'm going to build a road, and I'm going to make a lot of money, highly profitable. So hard surface roads will now be built all over the place, and all of those tolls will be collected. And actually, when I say they're like the pikes, if you think of, those parking garages where you don't back up the right way, imagine those just a little bit taller, and that's pretty much what they are. Significance, it turns into a building boom. Everybody wants to build turnpikes. Everybody wants to build roads. In 1832, 2,400 miles of roads connecting most major cities. So what does the government do when they start seeing people make all these money? Eastern states say people are going to be moving. In 1811, the beginning of the Cumberland Road, the national road, that's Highway 40 that goes through Terre Haute. In 1852, it linked Cumberland in western Maryland to Vandalia in Illinois, which is really close by St. Louis. 591-mile road supported by both state and federal funds become a vital highway to the west. We're going to stop at the bottom of that page. I didn't realize what time it is. All right. Bye, people. We'll see you guys tomorrow.